let's talk a little bit about what is watt density, and more importantly, why do I care about that?
Yeah, watt density can be a little confusing for some people, especially if you've never seen it and don't understand the full concept of it. But it's basically when you're applying heat into your kettle, just simple here. It's how much area inside that kettle are you applying that heat to? Mm-hmm. If you're applying a bunch of heat to a really small area, that area is going to get hot, and all the heat's going to transfer through right there. You're going to get scorching and stuff. If you have a much larger area that you can apply that heat to, that's going to be much better at the heat transfer and just less scorching and less burning on and less to clean up. But the way that relates to watt density is if you have a much larger area, that means much lower watt density because you have it spread out more with the larger area.
Yeah, so the watts divided by a bigger number. The area. Watts divided by the area.
The larger your area that you're applying the heat to, the lower your watt density in that area is going to be.
I think a lot of home brewers think high density sounds great because it's high, it's like fast. And you can always slow down, but you live and you learn very quickly.
It's like a golf score, lower's better.
Definitely.
Having that heat spread out. I learned the hard way, sadly, we'll leave that company's name out, before I went to Anvil. And one of the selling features of the Anvil, because I didn't have any experience with an Anvil system, was, other than the double wall and several other items, was, the 12240 is awesome, but that low density. That low density was a deal breaker. If it didn't have low density, I didn't want it. And at that time, I believe there was like only 2 companies even making low density systems. Everybody was high density because they were like, hey, we're gonna sell to the customers because they think high density sounds great. And I had learned from my mistakes because I like to brew with rye, wheat, flaked grains. I like to brew with things that like to stick.
Gummy.
Gummy, very gummy, oatmeal. And I learned very quickly that I did not want high density. I really wanted low density. And I still get upset now when I see other companies coming out with high density burners because I know there's somebody out there who's not going to know any better. They're going to buy it and they're going to wish they didn't buy it.
Yeah, and some of those companies, they're just trying to repurpose like a water heater, which if you're trying to just heat up water, that's one thing. But when you have a mixture like you do in brewing, that's a little stickier and a little thicker.
That's what I was going to say, thick and sticky.
Yeah, you definitely want to apply the heat over a much larger area.
Yeah, and that was one of the, when we developed the BoilerMaker surface, that's even lower watt density. We were able to cover nearly the entire bottom of the kettle with the heating element. So it's pretty nice one.
And it's definitely something that's important too. I recently saw on a reselling site that sells Anvil equipment, Blickman equipment, and other companies, they have that information down in a long graph on a comparison chart because they know that that's an important feature that maybe most home brewers don't know that that's important, but the resellers are starting to get that that is important and they need to make sure that information out there. That way if the customer decides to buy something with high density and starts having scorching, they go, well, we provided you with the information, you chose the product, maybe you should buy this too now because you didn't make the right decision the first time.
Yeah, and just what does it offer you with low watt density, high watt density? It's the scorching. You're not going to get nearly as much scorching. And then at the end of the brew day, it's easier to clean up if your heat's been going through a large area.
Yeah. And I mean, I think anybody who's been a liquid extract brewer, I can about guarantee, has scorched some wort, and it's pretty nasty. You can immediately tell it's dumping brow.
I could see that in dry too, because I've seen that where people dump it in and it's all clumped, and I'm like,
yeah, we've all had those learning experiences.
And I have seen on your support, they say, hey, and Jared has said it, if you're doing an extract, turn the temperature off for a minute, pour it in, stir it up, and then turn it back on, just for safety. I mean, even with low density, you still have that possibility.
Yeah, because with extract, it's just a big glob that sinks to the bottom. It takes a while to dissolve that. But if it's a big glob, it's not transferring heat, so it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. And that's really what happens and why it scorches. So, even when you're, the key thing is high density or low density, that wort's got to be able to move. And if it's in an open vessel, it's going to move just by convection. So you're going to be fine. If you put, for example, a grain bag or a basket in there that's going to reduce the ability for that wort to flow, it's going to get hotter and hotter and hotter underneath there. It'll eventually get to a boiling point, in
that one
extreme case. Yeah. So one of the things there is just keep the wort moving, or some of the units out there have power control. While you're in the middle of your actual mash, just turn the power down, and that'll help too. Because you don't need all that power to maintain temperature. So
You can actually maintain it a little bit better if you had the power down lower, because it can
Yeah.
be easy to overshoot if you're running 100% power and it
Yes.
just kicks on because it needs to heat up.
I think a lot of us have learned that too, because I was joking recently that I was doing a mash and started to walk away, and I started temperature start. I'm like, oh, I don't need 60%. I don't need 100%. I'm only at 148. Yeah. And I didn't think about lowering the power. Probably does help a lot. I know when I did my kettle sour recently, I lowered the power very low because I figured I just need to just maintain it, and I'm covering it all up, and it worked just fine.